Time now for our GMA Pride Month Spotlight, honoring LGBTQ+ stories and accomplishments all month long. This week, we are bringing it to the ballroom.
For decades, they were the ideal image of masculinity riding horses through the desert, firing guns with chilling precision, then passionately kissing sultry starlets on the big screen. But few knew. In real life, some of them had never even held a woman's hand, never dated, never had a love scandal because the person they truly loved was a man. Some lived quietly with their boyfriends for 55 years, yet all of Hollywood only dared call them close managers. Some died of AIDS, but back then the press could only report it as a severe case of pneumonia. Others left behind hundreds of love letters to their male partners, but the moment they passed away, their families burned every trace of evidence, leaving only one final command no one must ever know. Why the secrecy? Because even a single leaked photo showing affection could shred contracts to pieces, turn directors against them, get roles cut, and destroy an entire career overnight. Hollywood could make them icons, but wouldn't hesitate to bury them the moment the truth came out. In this video, we'll take you deep into the darkest backstage corners of the movie capital, where 10 stars carried the greatest secret of their lives to the grave. 1. Burt Lancaster, the masculine icon and the secret behind the dressing room number 3. On the silver screen, Burt Lancaster was the embodiment of the ideal gentleman, strong, sophisticated with deep eyes and a smile sharp as a razor. But behind the roles that captivated millions of women was a secret door that Hollywood never dared to open. In the summer of 1952, while From Here to Eternity was in pre-production at the Paramount lot, dressing room number 3 suddenly became the talk of the backstage crew. No one said anything outright, but everyone seemed to know. Because whenever shooting ran late into the night, the door of room 3 would lock. From the inside, the lights would dim to a soft amber glow, and the gentle sound of jazz would begin to play. The first to enter Burt Lancaster. The one who came after, James Marlowe, a young Broadway dancer, described as having a smile like fire and eyes like lightning. A seasoned makeup artist once said, "No one dared ask because everyone knew." If the door was locked and the music was still playing, the night wasn't over yet. That relationship was never acknowledged, but it was enough to catch the attention of the FBI. A declassified document from 1993 revealed that director J. Edgar Hoover had once ordered surveillance on Burt, citing a serious moral risk within military circles. The reason secret parties at a Malibu estate exclusively attended by men, most of them young talents who had just signed with Columbia. In July 1960, Confidential magazine received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a photo believed to show Burt holding hands with a tan-skinned man on the deck of a cruise ship in Greece. On the back of the photo, a handwritten note read, "He said we were forever. Now he won't even return my calls." The photo never reached the public eye because just weeks later, the studio paid $15,000 to quietly clean up the situation. Even Burt's 22-year marriage to his wife June was more of an unspoken arrangement. A PR staffer at Columbia recalled all 3 of them. Burt, June, and a stage director knew the rules. As long as the ideal man image stayed intact then backstage, it didn't matter who loved whom, but sometimes emotions couldn't be contained. During the filming of The Swimmer in 1968, Burt punched a supporting actor straight in the face, after the man jokingly remarked about his sexuality. Burt's a great swimmer must be all that time in bathtubs with other men. Police arrived just 20 minutes later, but the studio intervened swiftly and everything was hushed. And it didn't stop there. A bold plan was once drawn up in 1973. Burt intended to leave Hollywood, move to Italy, and live openly as a stage director with the man he loved, a French ballet dancer. But just 2 months before the move, his lover was killed in a car accident on a highway near Nice. The plan fell apart. Bert collapsed. And for the next 5 years, he didn't take on a single role. It wasn't until 2006 that the silence was finally broken by his son, screenwriter Bill Lancaster, in an interview with Vanity Fair. "My father could be anyone on screen, but in real life he lived like he was running from himself. A hero, a secret lover, a soul trapped between two worlds that would never meet." 2. Paul Newman, the love letters never sent. Behind those dazzling blue eyes that once made the whole world pause for a few seconds whenever they appeared on screen, Paul Newman carried silences no one ever expected. A man with a flawless exterior, a cinematic legend. Yet he spent his entire life with things he could never say out loud. In the summer of 1955, when Paul Newman first stepped into the spotlight of Hollywood, people said he had it all: looks, talent, and a wide-open future ahead. But around that same time, during the filming of East of Eden, something else began. A quiet relationship between him and James Dean, the reserved colleague who often got lost in thought, was once witnessed by a member of the makeup team. They weren't public, but they didn't fully hide it either. They often took morning walks together, sitting for long hours in the dressing room even after the crew had left. Dean's manager later kept some behind-the-scenes pictures he claimed could be used if needed. And from that moment, invisible limits began to appear in Paul's contract's clauses, forbidding him from forming close personal relationships with male co-stars outside of filming hours. Everything was framed as image protection, but only those involved truly understood what it meant. In the early 1970s, a small wooden cabin in the Sundance Mountains of Utah began drawing attention from real estate circles. The owner was listed as an anonymous figure, but only one regular visitor ever came by Robert Redford. They said Redford showed up once a month, always driving alone, no bodyguards, no fanfare. A neighbor from across the slope once recalled seeing the two men sitting together on the porch, talking endlessly under the autumn sunset. They weren't just ordinary friends, and they had never been strangers. That relationship endured in near silence, but was so deeply bonded that no one dared question it. Joanne Woodward, the wife often referred to as Paul's right hand and safe haven, for over 50 years never spoke publicly about the rumors. But years later, a crew manager from the film Winning revealed that Joanne had once requested the firing of a lighting assistant just 3 days into the job after she accidentally found him alone with Paul in the dressing room during non-filming hours. No argument, no confrontation. Joanne simply told the director one sentence: "If he stays, I can't continue." Everything was handled quietly, just as every scandal in Hollywood often gets extinguished before it ever ignites. In 1985, after Rock Hudson publicly revealed he had AIDS, Paul Newman once drafted a personal note, preparing for a major interview with Barbara Walters. He had planned to share a piece of truth he'd kept hidden for too long, that he had once loved a man, and that love had completely changed how he saw life. But just hours before the taping, legal representatives from the studio he was working with showed up unexpectedly, holding an image clause. The interview was canceled. No one ever said why, but everyone in the industry understood. A medical staffer who once worked at Warner Brothers recalled Paul Newman coming in suffering from exhaustion, chronic insomnia, and needing a heavy sedative usually prescribed for major depressive episodes. What stood out was that his hospital records were labeled top secret. No journalist ever found out. Not a single word reached the press. Everything was kept absolutely silent. Joanne passed away a few years before Paul. After her death, the family opened a small safe that she had always kept private. Inside were a few personal papers and 6 handwritten letters neatly placed in envelopes labeled Dean to Paul. Keep safe. Strangely, In the lower corner of each letter was a handwritten R.H. in black ink, which close family friends confirmed stood for Rock Hudson. It appeared Rock had held on to those letters for a long time, before eventually passing them on to Joanne. No one knows what the letters said, as the family chose not to release their contents. But their mere existence was enough to open a shadowed corner in the life of a man the world thought it knew. The marriage between Paul and Joanne, once seen as the epitome of artistic love and truth, began with a contract. According to a document leaked years later, 20th Century Fox had required Newman to marry within 18 months of signing his exclusive contract if he wanted to remain a leading star. And Joanne, who had stood by him since his early days, was the perfect choice, both in love and in public image. They did love each other, but they were also required to become the model couple under the spotlight. A candid photo taken in 2008, just weeks before Paul Newman passed away, once circulated among a private group of photographers. In the image, Paul and Robert Redford sat across from each other at a small diner in Connecticut. Paul's hand rested gently on Robert's, and though their eyes said little, the photo left viewers breathless. The very next day, the image was bought by a third party and has never appeared in any newspaper since. Paul Newman left this world with dozens of stories still unresolved. Some secrets were buried forever, but some traces still remain, waiting for the day they can be pieced together into truth. 3. John Gavin, the U.S. ambassador and a love watched by the CIA for 25 years. On screen, John Gavin was the blueprint of the ideal man: tall, composed, chiseled features and a warm, commanding voice, as if he were born to play president's officers or the perfect husband. He portrayed Caesar in Spartacus 1960, starred alongside Doris Day in Midnight Lace, and took the lead role in Douglas Sirk's A Time to Love and A Time to Die in 1958. But it was on the set of that very film that a love story began, quiet, desperate, and lasting more than 2 decades. The man was Robert Lansing, a strikingly handsome actor known for the television series 12 O'Clock High. They first met during a minor audition for A Time to Love and A Time to Die. According to a now retired lighting technician, everyone on set could tell that John's gaze toward Robert wasn't just professional. They'd sneak off to sit together in the prop van, light each other's cigarettes, and John would smooth back Robert's hair, the kind of touch no one shares with just a colleague, he recalled in a 1999 Vanity Fair interview. But by 1960, as John climbed into the ranks of A-list stars, the studio suddenly called for a morality meeting, a coded internal vetting process for actors suspected of non-traditional family lifestyles. And just 3 weeks after that meeting, a shocking announcement was made. John Gavin had abruptly married actress Constance Towers, a woman he had only met at a few industry events. The press called it a romantic wedding, but insiders knew it was a career-saving arrangement. Confidential magazine's March 1961 issue reported that the marriage had been brokered by a Universal Studios lawyer and included the involvement of a high-ranking publicist. Within 24 hours, every trace of Lansing was erased from Gavin's life photos, destroyed letters vanished, and even their shared Big Sur cabin was sold to an anonymous doctor. Still, they continued seeing each other in secret for years. The turning point came in 1981 when President Ronald Reagan, a longtime friend and political ally, appointed John Gavin as the U.S. ambassador to Mexico. Before assuming the post, Gavin was required to sign a strict moral declaration, pledging to avoid any behavior inconsistent with traditional American family values. What no one knew was that at the very moment he was being sworn in, Robert Lansing was waiting for him at a small villa in suburban Santa Fe, a place they quietly escaped to on weekends. The story exploded when investigative reporter Richard Halperin of the Washington Star received an anonymous letter accusing Gavin of secretly leaving the U.S. Embassy in Mexico on weekends to visit a lover's villa near Chapultepec Hill. The CIA soon launched a covert probe under the codename El Doble, classifying it as a Level 3 national security risk, fearing Gavin's private life could be exploited by foreign operatives. But the worst blow came from within his own home. One night in 1982, Gavin's wife actress Constance Towers discovered a handwritten letter from Robert hidden inside a Bible on their bedside table. The letter ended with the words, "Whether you're an ambassador or a saint, you'll always be my John." The next morning, Robert was assaulted by two unidentified men outside a cafe in New Mexico. He suffered a broken arm head trauma and was hospitalized for nearly a week. No charges were ever filed, but many in the industry believed it was a coordinated warning. Under pressure from both the government and his personal life, John Gavin was forced to sever all contact with Robert after a final phone call that lasted just 2 minutes. According to Robert's close friend John said through tears, "They're threatening you, and I can't save you this time." Shortly after, Gavin moved permanently into the ambassador's residence in Mexico City, while Robert retreated to New York, living in seclusion until his death in a car accident in 1994. Though the love ended, Gavin never truly forgot. A church staff member in Santa Fe recalled that during Robert's funeral, an elderly man wearing a baseball cap and dark glasses arrived late, sat silently in the last pew, and after the service approached the casket. He placed a wooden rosary on top and left without a word. Engraved on the beads, "Forgive me, R." In 2018, when John Gavin passed away, a strange detail emerged in his will. A $5 million fund was quietly transferred to a mysterious beneficiary listed as RLG through a trust established in 1985. Many believe it stood for Robert Lansing Gavin, a combination of both names, a discreet final tribute. And when asked one last time about his personal life in a 2010 interview, John Gavin said only one sentence closing every hidden door behind him: "I represented America with honor, but my heart belonged to someone I was never allowed to name." So, what about the others? The stars who not only represented America, but also became symbols of forbidden love. Next up is George Nader, the man who dared to go public with his boyfriend and paid for it with his entire career. 4. Cesar Romero, the first Joker and his all-night parties with male dancers. The third name on this list is Cesar Romero. Behind the legendary Joker's smile beneath the glittering makeup and the booming laughter that echoed across television screens lay endless nights that Hollywood never dared to confront. Cesar Romero, the Cuban-born gentleman with slicked-back hair, a voice half charming, half dangerous, was once described by Look magazine as the man women dream of sleeping with, and men wish they could be. But few knew that he was the mastermind behind one of the most sophisticated and powerful underground circles in 1940s to 60s, Hollywood, a world where celebrities, politicians, even public morality icons could take off their masks, shed their reputations, and live truthfully for a few hours. Its internal codename was the Violet Room, but those in the know simply called it the room behind the bookshelf. According to an unpublished memoir by Broadway dancer Angelo Marquez, every Saturday night Romero's mansion in the Hollywood Hills would remain lit until nearly dawn. Over 20 young men, handpicked with care, would be brought in, each wearing a velvet violet robe, no phones, no real names. They would walk past a large painting in the first-floor hallway which turned out to be a secret door. And behind that door, every moral boundary society had imposed would be left behind. In a leaked passage, Angelo wrote, "I once saw Rock Hudson, shirtless, playing the piano in the middle of the room, while a famous comedian like Paul Lynde danced with a senator whose name started with J. They drank from gold-rimmed silver goblets engraved with an eye symbol. And everyone knew no matter who you were, a director or a federal judge, you kept your mouth shut." The list of rumored attendees at the Violet Room sent chills down spines. Among them, James Dean, who was once seen leaving at 4 a.m., barely able to stand according to a housemaid. Liberace playing the piano in the corner with teary eyes, locked on a middle-aged man in a tuxedo believed to be a Warner Brothers executive at the time. Even Senator Prescott Bush, father of George H.W. Bush, was rumored to have attended a secret gathering there in 1950. Though no photos ever surfaced, an FBI assistant's handwritten memo included open mail, April 12th. Note, Re-R, house, Violet Room, Prescott. Each party lasted until dawn, and then everything was cleaned to perfection as if it never happened. Romero never kept souvenirs for himself, except one safe hidden behind the brickwork of his second-floor fireplace. A housekeeper named Maria once said he always locked it with both a fingerprint and a long code written in Old Spanish. No one knew what was inside, but I once caught Caesar staring at it and whispering, "If I die, a few people on Capitol Hill won't dare leave their homes." When he died in 1994, the mansion was quickly sealed off by a group of unknown men. Neighbors reported seeing a government-licensed truck parked at the side gate for 3 straight hours. After that, no one knew what happened inside. In 2003, an internal FBI file was leaked. It included one chilling annotation that stunned even the most seasoned insiders, CR-001. Not declassified. Connected to 3 former federal officials. Evidence includes VHS tapes, diaries, and audio recordings. This is no longer legend. This is Hollywood, and the Joker truly had a kingdom where he didn't need to smile, yet made some of the most powerful people in the country fall deadly silent. Next up is John Gavin, the silver screen heartthrob, who later became U.S. ambassador to Mexico. But few know that for 25 years his same-sex relationship was quietly tracked by the CIA, as if loving the wrong person was itself a crime. 5. Roddy McDowell. The FBI seized a hidden trove of male nudes from his basement. In Hollywood, there are those who shine like stage lights, glamorous, untouchable, larger than life. Roddy McDowell was one of them. With the soft porcelain face of British nobility, the shy smile of a well-raised boy, and a voice as light as a London autumn breeze, he appeared to be the perfect gentleman. But behind that gentleness was a quiet world no one dared to enter. On September 2, 1974, when the FBI suddenly raided Roddy's mansion in Laurel Canyon, many assumed it was about drugs or political subversion. But it wasn't. What they found was far more unsettling. Behind a bookshelf door leading to the basement, agents uncovered box after box of film reels files and neatly cataloged photographs. All of them were male nudes, thousands of them. According to a leaked 2003 internal FBI report, there were at least 5,395 photographs of nude men classified by ID number, with notations of height, weight, personal preferences, and even names of former lovers. Some photos included chilling captions like, "Send only if blackmail needed," "Keep until retirement," or "Taken while drunk." More alarmingly, 3 of the men pictured were serving in high-ranking positions within the U.S. Congress at the time. A silent Super 8 reel found on the premises showed 5 nude men in masks pole dancing surrounded by laughing, intoxicated faces. One of them was believed to be a 1968 Oscar-winning director. His identity was never released, but just 2 months later, he resigned, suddenly citing mental exhaustion, and disappeared from Hollywood forever. Roddy was never convicted of any crime. But after the raid, his name appeared on a special surveillance list by U.S. intelligence, flagged as a potential link in a blackmail network, involving anti-war artists, closeted gay men, and conservative politicians. The case file was labeled RDM-74, not to be declassified before 2055. A former close friend who requested anonymity once recalled, "I asked him directly, 'Why keep all those photos, Roddy?' And he just shrugged and softly said, because if you hold what they fear most, no one dares to hurt you. Roddy's house parties became the stuff of legend never spoken aloud, only whispered. Rock Hudson once invited him to a birthday party in 1976, where a young actor jokingly asked, "Is it true you have nudes of everyone you've ever worked with?" Roddy smiled faintly, raised his wine glass, and replied, "Not all of them. Just the ones with something to lose." A former darkroom technician who worked for Roddy in 1969 shared in a later interview, "I once dropped a roll of film. It had photos of a famous actor tied up with a red silk tie, blindfolded hands, cuffed, with a belt. The note under the image read, 'He's about to win a Golden Globe.' I never went back to work, but to this day I still haven't thrown that photo away." When Roddy passed away from lung cancer in 1998, his family immediately hired a digital forensics team to recover all storage devices. However, more than 300 sample photos were missing, along with a Cuban gardener who had only been hired 2 months earlier. That man was never found. And yet, across the ocean during that very same decade, there lived a famous British Sherlock Holmes, who spent his life solving crimes, yet couldn't mend the fracture within his own heart. 6. George Nader, exiled by Hollywood for daring to live. Truthfully with his partner for 55 years. In the mid-1950s, George Nader was once hailed by Universal Pictures as the next Rock Hudson. Chiseled features, a rich, velvety voice, a perfect physique. He signed a $1 million contract, received script after script, and was named a breakout star of the year by the press. But in just 72 fateful hours, his entire career came crashing down. A Super 8 reel, secretly filmed inside his Palm Springs home, captured a moment of George kissing another man. That man was none other than Mark Miller, his personal manager, travel companion, lover, and the one who knew George better than George knew himself. Immediately afterward, every project was canceled. An internal Universal memo dated December 3, 1955, plainly stated George Nader no longer holds commercial value for mainstream markets. The crisis didn't end there. A reporter from Variety revealed that at least 3 studios had hired private investigators to follow Mark Miller, suspecting he was the reason George declined roles involving romantic leads with women. Rumors circulated that even Rock Hudson at the studio's urging once tried to convince George to break things off with Mark in order to preserve his stardom. But George just laughed and said, "I won't act not on screen, and definitely not in my own life." In August 1960, behind closed doors at the Los Angeles courthouse, a confidential trial took place. George sued a European film distributor for using a beachside photo of him and Mark to blackmail him into dubbing a film with homoerotic undertones. The lawsuit never went public, but according to press reports at the time, George was returned 13 private journals and a suitcase of confiscated photos in exchange for his silence. During a live KABC radio broadcast in 1972, a caller suddenly asked, "Do you ever regret choosing to live openly?" George paused for a few seconds, then replied slowly, "If I had hidden, I might still be a screen hero, but I won't give up the truest thing inside me just to become the fakest thing out there." And in a handwritten letter from George's mother revealed, only after her passing, she wrote, "They may take everything from you, my son. But if you can keep the one you love by your side till the end, that's the greatest victory of all." That very letter was later read by Mark Miller through tears at George's memorial service in 2002. According to an exclusive investigation by The Advocate in late 1968, the FBI launched a secret investigation under the file code ND-2261, suspecting George and Mark of involvement in a covert letter network for gay individuals in Hollywood. Though no concrete evidence was ever found, the file remained classified until 1981, as a potential threat to national media integrity. From the late 1970s onward, George and Mark lived in seclusion in a small house in Maui, Hawaii. But peace was never easy to come by. A vicious tabloid headline, "Hollywood's oldest gay couple still living," boldly sparked a fresh wave of hate. They received multiple death threats via anonymous letters and had to request police protection for 3 months, simply for daring to live honestly. In 2001, George quietly passed away from complications related to a lung condition. Among his belongings was an unpublished handwritten memoir with this line, "Hollywood took my money, my fame, my career. But it never took Mark from me." To this day, the book remains shelved by a major publisher, citing concerns that it could impact the legacy of certain connected public figures. Just a few years later, Mark Miller passed away as well. In his will, he left a single line for George: "Thank you for never leaving me, even when the whole world turned away." And that is the truth behind the spotlight. A story that never made the front page, but will forever live in the hearts of those who believe love does not need permission to exist. 7. Jeremy Brett. England's Sherlock Holmes, and a heart shattered by being forced to live straight. Next on the list is Jeremy Brett. Before becoming the iconic Sherlock Holmes in Granada Television's legendary 1980s series, Jeremy Brett had already dazzled as a rising star on the stages of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and privately as the secret lover of a British nobleman with royal blood. That man, later revealed to be the future husband of a famous princess, had once loved Jeremy with a passion bordering on obsession. But in the end, he chose the safe road for his name, not his heart. According to Jeremy's closest friend, their relationship ended with a frozen slap and 2 torn train tickets at Paddington Station, like a farewell ritual written in silence. In June 1963, Jeremy was pressured by his family to visit a private psychiatrist in Belgravia. The doctor recommended hormone therapy to stabilize his sexual orientation. It was a polite euphemism for what the press back then still called curing queerness. For 3 consecutive months, Jeremy was injected with hormones that caused sleep disorders, nervous breakdowns, and even mild hallucinations. Still, in the medical report sent to his parents, the doctor coldly wrote, promising progress, no more signs of emotional deviation. Just months after completing the so-called therapy, Jeremy abruptly married actress Anna Massey. The rushed wedding stunned the press. In a diary found in Anna's wardrobe after her death, one line stood out. "On our wedding night, he wouldn't look me in the eye. He lay turned toward the wall, trembling like a child. I didn't know if he was crying or acting in a role he hated the most." The marriage lasted 4 years and ended in a bitter custody battle that Anna later described in the Times as a lawsuit between 2 strangers who once pretended to be lovers. After the divorce, Jeremy vanished from all public romantic life. For 2 decades, he lived like a shadow. No relationships, no scandals, not even rumors. In 1984, when Jeremy was cast as Sherlock Holmes, Granada Television added a special clause to his contract: the lead actor must maintain a public image of singleness and avoid any private relationships that might disrupt the audience's perception of the character. An internal email from Granada's executive producer, leaked years later, read, "We cannot allow Holmes to have emotional attachments beyond intellect, and we certainly cannot allow Brett to be associated with any non-normative inclinations on screen or off." An anonymous colleague once said, during breaks, Jeremy would often stand in front of the makeup mirror whispering like he was talking to someone who wasn't there. One time, I heard him say, "If Holmes is the role that hides me, then I'm sorry I've played it too well." In 1989, during a shoot in Whitby, Jeremy suddenly collapsed in the dressing room. Beside him were 10 empty sedative pill wrappers and a 3-page handwritten letter addressed to someone named Jay. No one ever confirmed who that was. The letter had been hidden inside The Adventures of the Dancing Men, with the final line reading, "If we can't be together in life, let me carry you into my final performance." After Jeremy's death in 1995, a leaked file from a private Harley Street clinic revealed he had once applied for pre-gender transition evaluation in 1971. The application was denied for not meeting the ethical standards of medical practice in the UK. A former assistant told The Guardian, "I don't think he wanted to be a woman. I think he just wanted to be himself without needing anyone's permission." At the small memorial, Granada held for him no family, no national broadcast. One anonymous letter was chosen as the final eulogy. "You played Holmes so well, the world forgot who Jeremy Brett was. But there's one mystery Holmes could never solve, the heart that was imprisoned his entire life. And if you think that was the peak of tragedy, prepare for another tale. Of a blonde prince of Hollywood who made women swoon across continents, but never left behind a single trace of love with any of them." 8. Troy Donahue, the blonde prince of Hollywood who never loved a single woman. Long before Leonardo DiCaprio, there was Troy Donahue with golden hair, sea-blue eyes, and the smile of a Greek god. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, he became America's teenage dream, starring in box office hits like A Summer Place Parish and Susan Slade. Every girl wanted to kiss him. Every boy wanted to be him. But behind the curtain of fame and charm, Troy Donahue was living a lie so tightly sealed that even his closest co-stars never guessed. In 1960, a fan magazine dubbed him the last real straight prince of Hollywood, a label that secretly tormented him for years. He once confided to a fellow actor in a bar in West Hollywood, "They think I'm bedding every starlet I work with. Truth is, I've never kissed a woman without pretending she was someone else." His studio contract with Warner Brothers came with a clause that forbade any non-conforming behavior, and every public appearance was staged. He was seen at premieres holding hands with Connie Stevens, Natalie Wood, even with Claudia Cardinale. But according to a leaked memo from his agent, these are public stunts. No intimacy is to be implied or developed. Troy must remain marketable. In truth, the only real relationship he ever had was with a production assistant named Peter, a quiet man who was never mentioned in the tabloids. For more than 20 years, they lived in a hidden duplex in Laurel Canyon. Every morning, Peter packed Troy's lunch, kissed him goodbye, and stayed in the shadows. To the outside world, he was nothing more than the house manager. A former makeup artist recalled one time Troy came to set with a black eye. He said it was from tripping over a stair, but his eyes were red like he'd cried all night. Later, I heard Peter had begged him to come out. Troy refused, and they fought. He was terrified of losing everything. In 1981, Troy was cast in a small role in the film Hardly Working with Jerry Lewis. During filming, one of the younger actors joked, "Careful. I hear Troy swings both ways." The joke was followed by laughter and then a chilling silence from Donahue. He didn't say a word. He just walked off set, didn't return for 3 days, and when he did, his performance was eerily distant. Years later, Peter died in a car accident in Silver Lake. The official statement from Troy's publicist was, "A longtime family friend has passed away," but a neighbor recalled hearing Troy scream into the night, "He was everything I never had the courage to be." After Peter's death, Troy spiraled into alcoholism and financial ruin. By the 1990s, he was living in a modest apartment far from the glamorous mansions of his youth. A reporter once asked him, "Looking back, what's your biggest regret?" He replied that I let the world decide who I was, and that I made him pay for it. Troy Donahue died in 2001 of a heart attack. Among his belongings was a shoebox filled with Polaroids, candid photos of him and Peter holding hands on the beach, sharing Christmas dinners, sleeping on a couch. On the back of one photo, scribbled in fading ink, were the words, "For the world, I was Troy. But for you, I was just a man in love." And just when you think Hollywood couldn't bury secrets any deeper, wait until you hear about the next name, a star. So loved by fans, yet even his gravestone was edited to hide who he really was. 9. Dirk Bogarde. A lifetime with his male manager and love letters banned for 20 years. For decades, the British press called him the intellectual gentleman of British cinema, a symbol of elegance, quiet sophistication, and refined mystery. So much so he seemed to have no personal life at all. They said he lived alone, loved books, adored art, avoided scandal, and never married. But strangely, no one ever talked about Anthony Forwood. His former co-star, the man who lived with Dirk for over 30 years, traveled with him, attended award ceremonies by his side, and held his entire personal will. Not a single article called them life partners. No producer dared utter the word couple. Everyone understood, but no one spoke. And that silence, that unbearable silence, was what hurt Dirk the most. In 1968, Dirk Bogarde signed a memoir deal with Harper & Row, a publishing contract expected to shake the literary world. But when the first manuscript was submitted, all hopes collapsed instantly. Dirk had included over 40 pages of love letters he wrote to Tony, the only man he ever loved, along with the confession, "I've never loved a woman, and I've never wanted to." The publisher's response, a threatening letter demanding immediate edits to meet American moral standards. If not, the entire deal would be terminated. Dirk said nothing. He withdrew the manuscript and never published the memoir again. Years later, leaked files from the British Library revealed that, on the very day of Dirk's funeral, a cousin, acting as the family's legal representative, traveled to Haute-Var, France, and secured all letters, diaries, and personal photos of Dirk and Tony. They ordered the archive sealed indefinitely, warning of lawsuits against anyone who tried to publish the offensive content that insults British cultural values. Only a single handwritten note, secretly photographed by a gardener named Etienne, survived. In trembling handwriting, Dirk wrote, "Tony loved me without ever needing me to say it aloud. But because of that, I learned to remain silent. I played 60 straight men and the world believed it. But when I held his hand in that hospital room just once, I felt real." Etienne once saw Dirk kneeling under the balcony, sobbing uncontrollably, after receiving a letter Tony wrote from the chemo ward. Dirk cried out in French, "Why is it in real life I cannot love the one who's dying just because he's not a woman?" In 1985, the government considered awarding Dirk a knighthood. But according to a 2020 leak from The Guardian, MY5 submitted a recommendation to delay the honor due to a long-term intimate relationship with a male companion of undefined legal status. And just like that, the honor never came. The BBC had planned a farewell interview in 1990, filmed in a special studio. Right before filming, Dirk stood in front of the mirror and whispered to himself, "Today, I will say his name. Even if they cut it, I'll say it." But the footage never aired. An anonymous editor later revealed, "We were ordered to destroy it." The official reason, it goes against British family values. Tony passed away in 1988. Dirk arranged the cremation himself inside their villa and kept Tony's ashes in a drawer for 11 years. Their housekeeper, Margot, recalled, "Every morning he'd walk into the study, look at the drawer, and whisper, 'Bonjour, mon cœur.' Good morning, my heart." When Dirk died in 1999, the family organized a funeral where no one was allowed to mention Tony. All photos of him were removed. But on Dirk's desk they found a scribbled note. As if interrupted mid-sentence, I played over 60 heterosexual roles. But the only one I truly acted was when I cooked dinner for Tony. Ridiculous. To this day, the manuscript believed to be his final work, titled "Let Me Say His Name," once remains locked in drawer number 17 at Oxford University. No one has been granted access. And somewhere there was another man also living a lifetime of straight roles. But instead of staying silent, he chose to confess it all. 10. Farley Granger. Admitted to loving both men and women. In the 1950s, when Hollywood was boxing everything into narrow molds, men had to be strong. Women had to be proper. And love was only allowed to be straight, like the Sunset Boulevard Farley Granger dared to walk a tightrope between two worlds. As beautiful as a Greek god, he rose to fame through Rope, 1948, and Strangers on a Train, 1951, and Farley didn't just make women swoon, he also captivated the tender hearts hidden in the shadows, with his absent-minded smile and eyes that seemed to know something you didn't. In 1952, Farley was photographed leaving the Chateau Marmont with a gay writer. Confidential magazine had the photo in hand but didn't publish it. Instead, they sent a threat to MGM, either $50,000 or tomorrow all of America knows. MGM paid. Farley narrowly escaped a career-ending scandal. But from that day on, he lived as if with a hood over his head, always followed, constantly monitored behind the scenes, always forced to smile when he didn't want to kiss when he felt nothing. It seemed he might surrender to the role of a quiet, pretty boy. But in 1953, Farley stunned all of Hollywood by publicly dating Shelley Winters, one of the hottest screen sirens of the time. They were dubbed the Golden Couple until one night at a backstage party, a man in a red velvet robe suddenly approached, threw a cocktail straight into Farley's face and shouted in front of dozens of guests, "You can smile for the world, but who do you kiss when you go home, Farley?" The party collapsed into chaos. Shelley stood frozen, but she continued dating Farley for 2 more years, as if that truth had never existed. The press only wrote, "Shelley is a generous woman." However, the story didn't end there. Farley began appearing on an unspoken blacklist among producers. Roles were abruptly handed to others. A famous director once bluntly said in a meeting, "I don't hire actors, the audience doesn't know who they love." Farley just smiled at the time, but weeks later he called a close friend and whispered, "I know who I love. I just don't know if I'm allowed to love." In 1978, an anonymous man sent a letter to CBS accusing Farley of making him dress as a woman to dodge paparazzi, and even forcing a young actress to have an abortion when things got complicated. The letter was never verified, but the FBI summoned Farley for a more than 3-hour interrogation. No records, no announcements. No one ever knew what was said. The 2007 memoir Include Me Out stirred controversy with one small but explosive detail: I truly loved Shelley. But I also once trembled when Leonard Bernstein gently touched my hand backstage. Immediately loyal fans turned their backs. Letters flooded the publisher with the stench of hatred. A group of former admirers even held a small protest outside Farley's Manhattan home, hoisting a banner. "We don't want a two-faced James Dean." One publishing house demanded he remove all mentions of Leonard Bernstein for damaging the image of the deceased. Farley agreed, but the original manuscript still exists, locked away in the sensitive archives room of the New York Public Library. No one is allowed to copy it. No one is allowed to quote it. A former secret lover once wrote in a letter Farley told me, "If I die tomorrow, people will only remember the kisses on screen, not the man who used to smile when I slept." In 2011, Farley passed away. Only 17 people attended the funeral. A mysterious man arrived late and placed on his coffin a manuscript titled The Bisexual Kiss. The author's name was Clear Farley Granger. No one knows when that script will ever be released, but backstage the whispers still echo he loved and dared to say it, even if the price was the entire industry turning its back. 11. Van Johnson. forced into marriage to conceal his true self. The seventh on our list is Van Johnson. In the summer of 1947, Van Johnson was walking in the realm of glory. He was MGM's top star, gracing the cover of Life magazine, hailed as America's ideal man, with golden hair, a gentle gaze, and a smile that made millions of women swoon. To the public eye, Van was the perfect husband, father, and embodiment of traditional American values. But behind that glamorous Hollywood curtain, Van was living a completely different life, one that was secret anxious, yet brimming with passion. The only person who truly made his heart beat wasn't any female star, but Richard McAllister, a young assistant director working with him on the MGM lot. Their connection began during late-night script readings in Bungalow No. 9, reserved for leading actors. It started as casual talk over lines, and directing dreams gradually turning into prolonged gazes, accidental touches that became purposeful, and ultimately a relationship that couldn't stay hidden in their eyes. One crew member recalled that Van once canceled an entire press conference just to drive with Richard overnight to Malibu. They sat in silence on the sand, not needing words. Only those truly in love can sit together for hours without saying anything, the driver later said. But I had to turn the car around and pretend to be paparazzi, so they knew the outside world still existed. But that outside world crashed in with brutal force. At a party at director George Cukor's estate, Van and Richard were accidentally seen kissing in the study, the door only slightly ajar. A freelance photographer from Hollywood Citizen News got the shot and handed it over to MGM the very next day, accompanied by a handwritten warning in red ink. If you want to keep the image of America's sweetheart, you know what to do. The next morning, in an emergency board meeting, MGM mogul Louis B. Mayer pounded his fist and flung a golden globe across the room. He roared, "I don't care whom he loves, but what I care about is our box office image. If he has to marry, make it today." Within a week, a plan was concocted. Van Johnson would marry Evie Wynn, the ex-wife of his close friend actor Keenan Wynn. In return, Keenan would be cast in 2 major studio films and be paid twice his usual rate. MGM's legal secretary later revealed that the marriage contract was more detailed than many film scripts. Van and Evie had to live together for at least 5 years, couldn't be apart for more than 3 days, and had to hold one public photo op with the press every month. Every clause directly impacted their pay, reputation, and future. And Richard, he was coldly pushed out. His name vanished from every MGM personnel file his projects reassigned. A one-way train ticket to New York was booked for him, no explanation given. From that day on, Richard McAllister never appeared on any California sound stages again. Van wasn't allowed to contact him, write letters, or inquire. The one person he loved was completely erased, as if he had never existed. Yet, on a sleepless night before his wedding, Van secretly penned a letter to Richard's old Brooklyn address. "I didn't choose to walk away from you. They'd decided it for me, for you, for the world. If they ripped your hands from mine, let memory stay. You know I love you, don't you?" The letter never arrived. The courier afterward claimed someone from the studio came and retrieved it, saying it was sent by mistake. Years later, as the Los Angeles Times prepared to expose this through a special titled Hollywood's Buried Hearts, the draft was abruptly pulled. The editor overseeing it suddenly resigned and moved to cable TV in a small state. The investigative materials were lost, no copies remained. Van continued to live in the spotlight, but that light felt hollow. He never spoke of Richard, and he never mentioned his marriage to Evie, though they fulfilled the 5-year contract and quietly divorced. No scandal, just a short note. Van Johnson and Evie Wynn have finalized their divorce and remain friends. A housekeeper later revealed that Van kept a small wooden box in his bedroom. Inside was the only black and white photo of Richard standing on the Malibu beach, grinning with a camera in hand. On the back, in purple ink, if we cannot live together in the world, then let us remain in each other's hearts in a place no one can reach. And though Hollywood tried to bury the truth through the years, the pain of stifled hearts remained smoldering like an old burn. 12. Charles Laughton. Married to a Hollywood star but secretly cheating in West Hollywood. The last name on the list is none other than Charles Laughton, a figure forever linked to the Oscar Gold of 1933 and unforgettable performances on Broadway, and the silver screen long regarded as an icon of classic British and American cinema. But few would have guessed that behind his commanding voice and stern demeanor was a double life masked by a veneer of glamour and a wife chosen not for love. In 1929, Charles married actress Elsa Lanchester, the star who shook Hollywood with her role as the Bride of Frankenstein in 1935. In the press, they were a witty, talented artist couple hailed by studios as the perfect marriage between art and British sophistication. But behind the doors of their Beverly Hills mansion lay two separate lives. They had no children, did not share a bedroom, and according to Elsa's later memoirs, she had never once seen Charles naked in nearly 40 years of marriage. One night in 1954, according to leaked internal files from Paramount published by Confidential magazine, Charles Laughton was spotted exiting a small motel in West Hollywood hand in hand with a man described as young movie star handsome, carrying a script bag and laughing with a high-pitched voice like a Disney character. Local police were called not to arrest, but to ensure the press didn't find out as per the request of a high-ranking studio executive. George Cukor, the legendary director and a closeted gay man himself, once shared at a private party in 1960. Charles told me, "George, I don't want to live a lie, but I also don't want to be hanged with the emperor's robe they tailored for me." And from there, the shadows began to whisper louder. A former housekeeper for the Laughtons, as told in a 1997 Vanity Fair investigative feature, recalled, "Every Tuesday, Miss Elsa went out to teach dance. And like clockwork 30 minutes later, a young man with brown hair wearing a sheer silk shirt and green-tinted round glasses would arrive carrying a jazz record. They stayed in the room for nearly 2 hours. The next morning, the bedsheets were changed, and I had to throw away a pillow because it had a deep red lipstick stain. That man, identified by stagehands as Jimmy G, was an Italian-American saxophonist who had performed in live shows at Grauman's Egyptian Theater. But in August 1956, Jimmy vanished mysteriously. His apartment on Wilcox Avenue was left untouched, belongings still in place. His roommate only found a scrawled note, "I have to go." The man said, "If I ever show up in Beverly Hills again, he'll break every finger I have. And I need both hands to play." It wouldn't be the last scandal to haunt Charles. In 1961, while preparing for a major Broadway production, titled The Emperor's Love, a major sponsor suddenly pulled funding just days before opening night. The reason, an anonymous envelope had arrived at the sponsor's New York office containing photographs of Charles kissing a young man backstage. The play was canceled after only 3 performances, citing gastrointestinal illness in the lead actor. But tabloids like Hollywood Today and the Daily Mirror couldn't stop speculating, asking, what role is Laughton really playing in real life? His death in December 1962 was officially attributed to kidney cancer. But a nurse who cared for him at St. John's Hospital told the Los Angeles Times in a 1988 interview, he didn't cry because of the pain. He said, "I lived my whole life in a role I never chose." At the funeral, Elsa Lanchester appeared in all black, wearing oversized sunglasses. She did not shed a single tear, but when a reporter asked her what made her saddest, Elsa softly replied, "I'm not sad that he's gone. I'm sad that all my life I never knew who I was living with." Today, Charles Laughton's private letters are preserved at the UCLA Film and Television Archive, But all access requests have been denied, citing the protection of privacy and reputations of individuals still living. A historian who briefly accessed the collection in 2014 revealed I was only allowed to read a few excerpts. But what I saw, if made public, wouldn't just rewrite the history of a man, it would rewrite the history of an era. And from that moment on, Hollywood began to understand some truths aren't on screen. They're hidden in archives, in scorched photographs, and in the tears that never fall. Under the dazzling lights of Hollywood, they were cinematic icons, idols, worshipped by millions of hearts. But behind the on-screen smiles and roaring applause, they were stars forced to hide their true selves as gay men or women until the day they died. Not because they were ashamed, but because the system never allowed them to be who they really were. What do you think? How many other stars lived behind that glamorous mask? And when will the truth finally be put in its rightful place? Leave a comment below and tell us which story from today's video haunted you the most. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next shocking tales from behind the scenes of Hollywood.